Hello everyone and welcome to another chess video. Today we're going to look at a game played in the year 1999. Played between Hikaru Nakamura, who was around 12 to 13 years old at the time, against Emory Tate, who was playing with black in this game. So Hikaru was very young and he actually had a decent rating at the time. I believe it was USCF rating of about 2,500. So even for that age he was still incredibly strong, and obviously Emory Tate was an international master. So, Hikaru's playing white, Tate's playing black. Let's begin. Hikaru played e4, Tate played the French defence with e6. Hikaru played d4 and black played d5, and in this position white played knight to c3, with black opting to go into a Winawer variation with bishop to b4. Now, Nakamura played the normal move, which is e5, but Tate decided to deviate. Normally here, c5 is the main move, and play usually continues with a3. Bishop takes knight, pawn takes bishop, knight to e7, followed by queen to g4, and black has a few options. I believe they can play king to f8 here if they wish, or they can try and castle, which I think is a bit sharper. But after e5, Tate played the move b6, which has its ideas. So in the French defence, you've got, or you consider to have, a very weak c8 bishop. So black really wants to try and get rid of it as soon as possible. By playing b6, he hopes to play bishop to a6 and swap it off for white's bishop instead. So a decent plan, all in all, but let's see how it panned out. Hikaru now played a3, striking at the bishop on b4. So Tate can either play bishop to e7 here or take the knight. Traditionally, you're supposed to take the knight, that's what black did. Captured on c3 with check, doubling white's pawns, and black developed to e7. Now Hikaru could have played queen to g4 here if he wanted to, but he opted to play knight to f3, just simply developing, and he allowed Tate to play bishop to a6. There's not much white can do here. He could have played bishop to d3, to be honest. Maybe he could have played bishop to d3. But if captures, pawn takes, I don't know. Maybe after castles, black is actually doing okay. So after knight to f3, bishop to a6, Hikaru decided to play bishop takes a6. Knight takes a6 from black, and leaving the knight a little bit offside. So this actually helps white. So white now just castled kingside, castled normally, and black played the traditional move c5. Possibly he wants to try and retreat his knight back to c7, and even play moves like c4 here to lock up the position. Hikaru decided to try and give his bishop some more squares, so he actually played a4. The idea is to play bishop to a3 and give the bishop a really strong diagonal to work from, because obviously black doesn't actually have any bishops anymore. So this actually is a really nice plan. Tate's developed with queen to d7. I believe the move here is actually, he's trying to attack this pawn. So if white ever plays bishop to a3, obviously black will just capture it. Now there are some discovered ideas, as we'll soon see. So after queen to d7, Hikaru develops his own queen to e2, hitting the knight on a6. And this is what causes black now to lock up the position. So black played pawn to c4. I believe actually in this, after queen e2, maybe just knight c7 is probably the best move, and the computer actually gives it as equal for both sides. So c4 actually helps white, because now we can play bishop to a3, giving this bishop immense power along this diagonal. And there's no queen takes a4 ideas anymore, because now white can just simply take on e7, and there's a discovered attack against the queen. So bishop to a3 was a very nice move by Nakamura, and Tate now plays knight c7 anyway, so maybe he could have played it a move earlier without pushing c4. Maybe that was a better idea. Hikaru now plays knight to g5, a very interesting move. Maybe Tate should here just play h6 though, striking at the knight. Maybe he was worried about queen to h5 perhaps, because then obviously the h-pawn is pinned, stacking the rook. But black should actually play knight to g6 here, because then the knight protects the rook and also the pawn still attacks the knight, forcing the knight to go back to h3. And maybe this isn't so bad for black, after just now you can actually play queen takes a4, and there's no more discovered moves with this bishop for the time being. And again, the computer gives this variation as dead equal. So knight g5 is a bit premature, but in an actual human game it's very difficult to analyse this sort of thing. Knight g5 looks very scary indeed. So in the game, Tate actually played the move b5. Now I'm not too sure about this move, mainly because I think it's premature. Black actually hasn't developed yet, and we'll now see that actually white punishes black here with the move queen to h5. So threatening to take on f7, maybe even threatening to take on h7 as well. Tate played knight to g6 to stop the queen attacking f7. And there's several moves here that actually do well for white. One of them is f4, for instance, threatening to push even further. I was actually also looking at the move knight takes h7. Now I don't think this is actually very good in a practical sense, because maybe black can just take after bishop c5. Okay, white's still actually winning this position, but we've actually made it really awkward for ourselves if we're playing with the white pieces, that our knight is now pinned. But in the game, after knight to g6, Hikaru just played a really strong move, I think, just bishop to d6, getting his bishop into a more aggressive square. And this is where Tate now went wrong. He played h6, attacking the knight. We've seen this before, the knight on g6 actually protects the rook. However, this is a little known trick that usually occurs in sort of these French positions. White can actually just take a free pawn with knight takes f7. And if, for instance, queen takes f7, now white can just take on c7. So the queen is just too overwhelmed. The queen's attacking g6 for white, and it can't defend and take this other bishop at the same time. And white just wins a free pawn. Same after knight takes f7, king takes f7 even. Okay, the queen's not overwhelmed here, but white now just has f4. The point being is that you'll never be able to shift this queen off this diagonal. The king's always got to protect this knight. And for instance, if we continue, let's say knight to e8 to hit our own bishop, just bishop c5, and white's just going to play f5 next move, followed by rook takes f5. The king will have to move, and then the queen will capture the knight on g6 at some point. So you can't save your piece, basically. So knight takes f7 was a very nice move. And black now goes in for complications, plays knight to f4, hits the queen, gets it off this diagonal. But now Nakamura just plays queen to f3. I'm sure he analysed this position because it's quite sharp. Queen takes f7 was played, protecting the knights on f4 and winning a piece. However, Nakamura now just plays calmly, bishop takes c7. Again, we've been through this, so the queen is attacking the bishop but also defending the knight at the same time. You can't do both. For this reason, black plays g5 to give his knight some support. Now he is threatening to take the bishop. So Nakamura retreats, bishop d6, and the queen goes to g6. So black's now trying to counterattack with queen takes c2. White gets a good option here. He just takes a free pawn on b5 and gets rid of his double pawns. Queen takes c2 was played by black. And white's now in the driving seat. b6 is a strong move by Nakamura. So the pawn on a7 is pinned against his rook, so you can't take on b6. And now actually b7 is a really big threat as well. The bishop does a great job of protecting this b8 square. So once this pawn moves to b7, b8 will come very swiftly and black will have to give up a piece. For this reason, Tate has to play rook to h7. Nice move, stops the pawn promoting, but this isn't a very nice position for black to be in. But Nakamura plays another nice move, bishop to c7. b7 is now threatened once again, followed by b8. This forces black to take on c7 and give up the exchange. So Tate plays rook takes bishop, there's pawn takes bishop and king to d7. And here white's probably just winning the game. Now Nakamura in the game played king to h1 to give his king a hiding square, maybe stop tactics of knight to e2. However, g3 was still pretty good. So the tactic is now black could play queen takes c3, and if queen takes queen, there's a nice knight to e2 to pick it back up. But queen d1, and all of a sudden the knight's still attacked, and white's probably going to get a really nice position here. For instance, if the knight retreats back, then white can get a queen with check. Once the king takes, you've got queen to a4, with ideas of queen to e8 check and picking up the knight. So let's say the king moves, and then there's just queen to a6, and all of a sudden white's pieces are infiltrating the position. Queen d6, queen e6 is the unstoppable threat. However, in the game, Nakamura was just safe. He played king to h1. Nothing wrong with this, to be fair. Black took on c7. Now he plays g3, similar to what we had in the previous variation. But instead of moving the knight away, Tate actually played queen to d3, offering a trade. Nakamura accepts, so he takes with the knight, so the knight's no longer attacked. But now Nakamura starts pushing his pawns with f4. There's an exchange, and Tate also starts pushing his pawn. It looks quite a close game. However, white should be more flexible in these positions. Rooks are vastly superior to knights in open endgames. And white plays f5 with black taking, the rook takes, king goes to d7 to stop any rook f7 ideas, and the king will be able to escape to e6 if there's a check. Okay, so now I really like Nakamura's next move. It's not given in the engine, but it's a very nice, safe move. He plays h3, just gives his king a little bit of breathing space, stops any knight to f2 ideas and rook to g8 check ideas, so the king can now hide on h7. I really like this move. Tate continued though with a4, rook f7 from Nakamura with check, the king goes to c6, there's another check, the king goes to b5, another check with the other rook, and the king hides to a5. So the king is now trapped on the side of the board, and white just pushes with e6. Black could continue to push to their pawn, but after e7, rook to e8 and rook to b6, it's not looking very good for black in this position, and they actually have to give up the knight to stop the mating threats here with rook to a6 and rook to b6. So in the game, Tate played rook to e8, stopped the advancement of the e-pawn. Nakamura now played rook to f5. Now, white is just going to take on d5 with a check, and this is quite unstoppable. I think actually black should just take the pawn on e6 here and just hope and pray that the white could mess up. Rook takes d5 would have probably been played, and after king to a6, white can start threatening mate with rook to d8. Let's say king a7, rook to c8, and now white's probably just going to start hoovering these pawns up. For instance, a3, rook takes c4, again threatening checkmate, knight to b2, rook to b4 and rook to b6 is one of the computer variations, with white around +4 here, so I'll probably go on to win the game. Back in the actual game, though, after rook to f5, I think Tate played a3, and now Nakamura can just take on d5, and I believe after this move, it just looks like white's going to win the game. So king to a4, and now rook to d7, with the idea of rook to a7 for white, threatening checkmate once again. Tate played knight to b2, so stopping the mate threat, the king can now run to b3. So it's a bit of a race in this endgame, but white is just really fast. d5 was played, king to b3, e7. King to a2 attacks the rook, however the rook can just move. And yeah, I think black's just too slow to develop and get this pawn going. Knight to a4 was played, and now d6, which supports e7. Knight takes c3 was played, rook to d8, and Tate resigned the game here. So why did he resign? Well, because there's no way to stop white getting a queen. If rook takes rook, white will just get the queen, and there's no way for black to promote their own pawn, so it's just game over. However, this was a very nice game played by Hikaru when he was roughly around 12 to 13 years old, I believe, against a very strong player. So already at this young age, Nakamura was an absolute beast of a player. And things just went from strength to strength for him from here on in. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the analysis of this game. If you did, please feel free to drop a like, comment or subscribe to the channel. There are many videos that will help your chess, and hopefully I'll see you in another video. Thank you.